Thank you. Well, welcome everybody to this month's Teach Climate Network workshop, The Power of We, How Inclusive Communication Drives Climate Action. This workshop is part of our Teach Climate Network workshop series, where we hope to bring the best practices of climate change education to you and also create opportunities to connect with a professional learning community of climate change leaders and educators. So this workshop is also part of our Midwest Educator Community of Practice, where we're dedicating 4 of these workshops throughout the year to highlighting Midwest-based speakers and topics that offer pathways to climate change education in the region. So just on that note, if you do find yourself in the Midwest and are interested in joining the Midwest Climate Collaborative Summit, the early bird registration is open. I'll drop that link there. I went last year. There was like almost 500 people there, maybe a little over 500 people from all different disciplines and such a range of really, really great presenting and connecting. But also fear not, if you're not in the Midwest, this workshop still has plenty of application for you. And I just want to give a little shout out to, as part of our Teach Climate Network, you also have accesses to all of our free resources. So you can check those out if you haven't yet. And here is that link in the chat for you as well. So as you settle in, just feel free to get comfortable with your Zoom settings so you can participate. We'll ask that you stay on mute during the presentation, but please engage with the chat. We're a very chat-friendly organization. And you can turn on closed captioning as well over there by finding that button. My name is Danielle Heffron, she, her, and I am here supporting technology today, and I work for Climate Generation. So if you need anything, just let me know, and I'll be tracking questions and stuff in the chat for Cook, our presenter. And then last thing before we jump in to today's workshop is I just wanted to make sure you're also aware of our next month's workshop, which is coming up fast this time, December 3rd at 5 p.m. We'll be joined by Friends of the Boundary Waters, and they'll be sharing about their climate change curriculum that focuses on moose. So here is that registration link if you are interested. Okay, so back to what we're all here for. So as I mentioned, today's Teach Climate Network workshop is The Power of We, How Inclusive Communication Drives Climate Action. And we're joined today by Cook Vu. Cook is a graduate student in the STEM education program at the University of Minnesota. Her research interest involves examining the phenomena behind inequities and representation of marginalized populations in STEM disciplines. Her favorite class to teach is Nature in the Cities, an environmental science course that focuses on science and conservation of biodiversity in the Twin Cities. That sounds really fun. Cook, we're so happy to have you. And as I understand, I think you were just in Brazil at the UN Climate Conference of the Parties. So thank you so much for being here. That must be a whirlwind. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to you, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Great. Thank you so much, Danielle. Hi, everyone. My name is Cook Kim Vu, and I go by she, hers. And let me share my screen. Okay. So thank you so much for joining me for the presentation on the power of we, how inclusive communication drives climate action. Originally, I was going to focus on inclusive communication because that's one of my areas that I've been focusing on at the University of Minnesota, which is inclusive science communication. How to translate your science in a way that anyone can understand because science is for everyone. Like as Danielle said, after coming back from COP30, I decided to switch gears a little bit and focus a little bit more on the climate action and how inclusive communication can be really impactful for climate action. So to get started, I'd like to know a little bit more about all of you. And to do that, we're going to do a little Menti. Present. So if you can either log into www.menti.com and enter in 66570128, or take your cell phone and scan the QR code, it will let you in. I'll give you about 30 seconds to do this. If you still are working on getting in, I left the QR code on the bottom, but the first question is, I just want to know where you are currently in. Sure of you, okay. California, wow. Massachusetts, Texas, Canada, Minneapolis. Hi, fellow Minneapolis. So I'm from Pittsburgh, Illinois. Perfect. Thank you. So we have folks from all over the United States as well as our friend in Canada. All right. So get rid of this bar. Hmm. Not letting me progress to the, oh, there we go, the next slide. Okay. So the next question I would like to know is, what is your role? Are you here as an admin, an educator, whatever you are joining us as? Perfect. Have professor, educational developer, director of education, environmental educator, perfect. Several environmental, okay. Staff at nonprofit, program manager, administrator, founder, youth program educator. Oh, I'll be talking to you as well at the end. Perfect. Okay. So I love doing the mentees because it really allows us to get to know each other and kind of where we are, what our role is, and not only for me to know to focus on my lecture a little bit more, my talk a little bit more, but also for all of you to see who's present. So we have several environmental educators. Perfect. Okay, move on. Okay, so my next question then, and my last one, is where are you in terms of using inclusive communication towards climate action? Are you an innovator, one of those that are, doing the research, creating the programs, developments? Are you an early adopter, using what's been created but earlier on than others have? Are you an early majority? Are you a late majority? Are you just, starting right now? So you would be part of the laggard group then. Perfect. Oh, we have a lot to learn from each other, especially from the early adopters. Okay. Some laggards, honest. Okay. Perfect. Nice mix of group. Give it a few more minutes or a few more seconds. Okay. Well, welcome everyone from wherever in the United States and Canada you're from, and whatever your role may be, whether it's an admin to an educator, and wherever you are along your process of using inclusive communication towards climate action. All right, we'll go back to here. All right. So with climate action, I have to with climate action, one of the main things that I've heard at COP30 was that oftentimes when we talk about climate action, we talk a lot about the science, the policy, and we sometimes overlook the purpose. So the speaker had given us a little blurb in terms of how science uses data, figures, and tables to inform us, but it's the purpose, the connections, and the stories that engage us more. So in terms of climate action, it really requires the combination of science, communicating the science, but also communicating the purpose, the connections, as well as the stories, the narratives that touch people on a personal level. So with inclusive communication involves sharing stories of people that are impacted by climate crisis from global to local. So global would be the work that is currently being done, for example, at the COP sessions, whether it's the negotiations or the presentations. But when we share the stories of people that are impacted by the climate crisis, it allows us to go then from global to local. And by doing that, it helps us to humanize the climate crisis, brings it closer to home. Inclusive communication also involves community engagement, local action, and addressing environmental justice and equity. And by including these actions, we're able to empower marginalized communities. And inclusive communication also involves constructive dialogue, positive framing, and relatable language, which allows us to then change the narrative from climate crisis, which we all need to know about, but then also to move beyond the climate crisis, beyond talking and to action, which is what inclusive communication will allow us to transition from. So at COP30, one of the focus at COP30 that moved from Baku, which is COP29, the finance COP, to COP30, which is more of the action COP, is that it focuses on climate solutions is indigenous. It focuses on decolonizing the green transition, as well as including a gender action plan. So it's being more inclusive of the different perspectives and valuing not only making space for the voices, but also decision making in the hands of diverse perspectives. In addition to the diversity, one of the things that I've seen at COP30 that allows the inclusive communication to move into climate action is allowing space and power for our youth. And oftentimes when we are developing curriculum, we develop it in a way where we're using more of the deficit model, where we think that, our students, we have to prepare them for everything, but that's not necessarily true. Hearing these youth speak, I'm starting to understand that they have a plan already, and they just need a place to voice their plan as well as a place to make the decisions. So there are these 4 youths that were present at one of the pavilions, and essentially they were telling about their story and how there's a larger organization and group where they created a priority area that includes climate education as a universal right, mental health and emotional support, resources for outdoor learning, which connects to nature learning to inspire action. So they're saying that if we want to consider moving from the climate crisis to climate action, we need to have education play a really big role in creating a space where we are teaching our youth how to appreciate and how to love the nature so that they can protect it. Because if they don't know about it, how can they be motivated to protect it? And of course, being a part of the nature learning to inspire action, you can't do that without amplifying and including indigenous knowledge. And then of course, child seats with voting power. They want to be a part of the decision making, not just to be able to voice their opinions, but to also be a part of the decision making. They want funds for child climate initiatives. They want funds for teacher education or teacher training. And one of the really impactful, because it's also in the area of my work, one of the impactful slides that they put up is the one on the bottom left-hand corner, where climate education is a universal right. So youth perspectives are were very acknowledged at this COP. in addition to that, I had the opportunity to go to Baku, which is COP29, the finance COP. And at that COP, it was focused a lot on negotiations and finance, where this COP was the first COP that I've been able to see such a strong presence of education. They actually had an education day at COP30, and this event was focused on creating um, infrastructure, finance, as well as looking at curriculum and pedagogy that involves inclusive perspectives from Indigenous youth and gender in terms of deciding, what needs to be done to move from the climate crisis to climate action. Then I wanted to share with you some of the work that I've been doing in terms of moving from the theory side of it, in terms of what is inclusive communication and how it impacts climate action, to an example of a curriculum that can be done. So I can see that amongst my colleagues here, a lot of you already have some work that you've already been doing, and I'll have time at the second half for you all to share what you've been doing. But I thought I could share one first to start off with. Like Daniela said, I teach a course called Nature in the Cities. And in this course, because a lot of times my students tell me that they want more real world applications. So I said, there's nothing more, real world than taking a look at the COP proceedings. So I will share my assignment with you. So I start out with talking about climate change in general. And I use a lot of audio, visual, videos. I use all different types of methods. I have them read articles. I show them videos. They can listen to podcasts. So there's multiple ways in which they can engage with the material, because some students like to read where others like to be more visual, more audio. So I provide multiple ways in which they can obtain the information. So we start off with what is climate change. I also provide different perspectives, some that are more academic side and some that are less academic side, but they're very valuable perspectives. And then we go in and talk about what exactly is the climate summits to let them understand what the United Nations Climate Change Conference is about. From there, keep in mind that the course that I teach is for undergrads, and you can scale this to different grade levels as well. But before we start this assignment at the end of the course, at the beginning of the course, we would go to local parks and explore the diversity, the biodiversity. They would do experiments with it. So it was more heavily on the environmental science side of it, in terms of identifying plants, animals, and exploring different techniques in which we evaluate the soil and the biodiversity in that area. So once they've actually been connected to and be a part of the land, the nature education, that's when I bring them to the COP proceedings. So with the COP proceedings, they learn about what's going on at COP, what's on the agenda, because each year there's a different agenda. So this was the one that, this was during the time I was teaching this course. It was right during COP29, the finance COP at Baku. And then the beautiful thing about the climate science is that you can be in any major that you want and you can participate in this. So you can come from a finance background, you can come from a biodiversity background, you can come from an architecture background, because all of this is intertwined with climate action. So I allow them to pick whatever key issue they're interested in, and they would then be the climate science communicators. They would do the research, interpret it, and part of that interpretation was the science communication, which is what originally this talk was going to be about, until I changed the focus more to COP. And then they would create postings on social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, to engage the public. So it was my way of teaching them about climate literacy, and then for them to teach it to the people that they know as well. So they would select one key issue that they're interested in, and it could be in anything. It could be adaptation, loss and damage. It could be in just transitions, whatever they're interested in. So it gives them the flexibility and the choice to see how, regardless of what background they're bringing in, they can play an important role in climate action. And I provide them with resources like climate generation, climate champions, UN climate change, World Resource Institute. So I provide them with resources where they can use to conduct their research and allow them to understand it at a deeper level so that they can translate it so that that content is understandable for the general public. Then some of their works, all of them have done extremely impressive things, but I just picked three because it represents the diversity in which their different fields allow them um, to participate in this climate action. So here's one student. They titled this Tracking Progress on Climate Commitments, Cities, Energy, Food, and Forest. And here's what they created. So you can see that they create quick informational materials about COP29. Why is it important? And you can tell that this is things that were important to them as well. And what's next? How countries are focusing on forest because that's what they were interested in, and so on. So this allowed them to connect their interest to climate action. Another example is this one. This student chose to connect it to her study, which is on addressing environmental justice through phytoremediation. So her work was on phytoremediation. And not only did she take something that was global, but she pulled it into local. So she pulled it into how it connects to the North Minneapolis, suffering from environmental injustices, while Northern Metal Recycling was running. So show you an example of that. She created beautiful info sheets with beautiful images about connecting just what I just talked about. So here's a great example of how she connected global and brought it to a local level of what she was specifically doing. And again, there's a lot of advocacy that she focused on. And the last one, let's see, this one. So this student titled their communication as Doom, Glory, or Both, and they chose to do this as a blog. Again, it was, I didn't tell them to focus on any specific topic within the COP29 discussion. They picked themselves what they were most interested in. So this student probably was more interested in the finance side of it because they focus on the finance of how to get to net zero. And you can tell that they're really thoughtful in terms of what they added in here. So they, why should you care? They presented this to their audience. And then what can you do? And they even provided a conclusion of what they felt was the conclusion to COP29. Okay. All right. So at this point, I want to save half of the time for all of you to share what works have you been working on in terms of how to create that connection between inclusive communication to climate action. So there are 28 of us. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put you into breakout rooms so that you can share kind of the work that you've been doing so that later on when I pull you back to the larger group, you can kind of give us a summary. Any questions before I put you into breakout rooms? Check the chat. So there is a question from Andy. Cool assignments. Did you discuss adding alternative text for these text-heavy Insta posts? Yeah. Yes, we actually part of the before they went into their projects, we did talk about part of the science communication is making this readable in terms of font, color, and I know I did a major, taboo with using a lot of green, but I figured since we're doing climate, I'd do green. But yes, we actually do have a section on part of the science communication that the font size, the color, as well as the font itself makes a difference. Yeah, let's see. All right, so if there's no questions, I'll put you into breakout rooms so you can talk and share kind of the work that you've been doing, and hopefully we can share as a larger group because the example that I gave you with nature in the cities is just one, and I'm sure a lot of you, especially the early adopters, um, have a lot to share. Okay, so let's see. Danielle, can you help me do the breakout rooms?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
How many folks in a room about? You were 3 or
Let's
4?
see. We have 15. So how about let's do three, 3 to 4 in a room?
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to open rooms. You should get a message in a moment. And Cook, how long did you want those rooms to be? I can send folks a message.
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna send them a message of what they
Oh,
should be talking about and how long they have as well. So I
go
was
ahead.
thinking about 10 minutes. That should
Perfect.
be enough, but so about 3 minutes per person.
Sounds good. And it looks like a couple haven't joined yet, so I might move one person who's alone at the moment.
Okay.
Okay, there's a group of three, and a group of a couple with people waiting to join. Okay. Yeah, and for anyone still in the main room, Andy, I appreciate your message there. If you just want to hang out till we all come back, that is totally cool. If you're here and confused and didn't get a message about your group, just let me know and I can help out. So, Cook, when did you get home or are you home?
I'm home. I just got home last night or the Monday night.
Yeah, I bet it's all a little bit of a blur, huh?
Yeah,
Oh, that's great. Well, welcome back.
thank you. So let's go until 4:40.
It goes until 5 officially, but at around 40 minutes, we say to turn it over for questions. So if it wraps up a little sooner than than
Oh
5,
no,
that's totally
I'm
fine too.
sorry. I meant the discussion, the breakout room, because I
Oh,
told Mike I'd
yes,
give him 10 minutes. Sorry, sorry.
I follow. No, it was just that perfect 40-minute mark that I was like, I know we send that in our email of like about 40 minutes of a presentation and then some discussion. But yes, I got you now. That sounds great.
Okay.
So what were some of your biggest, like, I don't know, takeaways or ahas from COP this year?
I think that was it. It was the focus on the fact that it was in Belém, that there was a really strong focus on the Amazon, and it's never the COP has never been at the Amazon before, and the Amazon represents the forest, which is one of the major carbon sinkholes, right?
Yeah.
So, it was, yeah, and there was so much community, and yeah, where at Baku it was so focused on negotiations and, figuring out how much everyone was responsible for and such that it really didn't have a really strong sense of community.
Yeah. Well, that's really great. Yeah, I've just been following our COP digests, and we have a delegation there, but not supported in the same way that like when you went, and just getting to hear some stories of how different this COP has felt from the past few years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that I noticed that before I kind of attended like the adaptations and um, the transitions, but this year there's so much on education because they really one of the really strong things that they said is that we so focus on reacting to the climate change that we lose focus on being proactive.
Hmm.
So even if we have all these policies in place, if the people don't agree with them, don't see the value in them, then what's the point? So it has to really start with education. And you have to start really at an early age, teach them how important it is to, recycle, to do all the things that you need to do to be able to have an environment to pass on to the future. Yeah.
That's really cool. I've never thought about education in that frame of like a proactive way to address the climate rather than reactive, because you're right, so many climate solutions. And I've thought about that with climate change education a lot, that we always start with all these impacts and horrible things. And then when you get to the solutions, they feel it's probably because they feel reactionary, that frame that you just mentioned, that makes them feel like less like, oh man, these are really cool. And they're facing some really big things. So that's a great reframe.
Yeah. And I hadn't thought about that too as an educator. I'm like, okay, we have to teach them, but I never realized that, yeah, it's true. Yep.
It's
That
just,
when it's very true that, when the COP president said that we're so focused on up here in terms of the science of things, the policy of things, that we don't focus in the heart.
mm,
Where because he said that it's a lot of work, it's a lot of intensive work that if you are not invested in it, you will burn out, you will give up. So yeah.
absolutely. Hmm.
And I have not seen, I mean, at Baku, there were youth presenting on their initiatives, their projects into how to remediate the climate crisis. Um, but none in terms of like speaking up for their right to vote and the advocacy side of it, which I see a lot at Climate Generation, but I
Yeah,
never saw so much space being given for it at a COP. So that was really nice.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I really hope we can send a delegation next year.
Yeah, I know. Who did you end up going with, or who was your badge through?
Yeah, so my badge was through University of Minnesota, the Institute on Environment.
Oh, cool.
Yep, so I'm really thankful for them. Yep.
Yeah, that's great. And this is how many times have you attended COP now?
So this is just my second time. So Baku was my first, but then I was able to go to SB
Okay.
62 before Baku, and then this one.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah, yeah. But I have to admit, I really appreciated my experience from Baku.
Yeah.
Going with the team is just different because with the University of Minnesota, I went as a researcher, as a grad student, so we didn't have as much as robust of a team approach.
Yeah. I ran into Beth at down in the cities last weekend, and she was saying that they got more badges than they expected, and maybe you were going a little bit more last minute. Was that part
Yes,
kind of okay? And she was
yeah,
saying that they're being sent as researchers. And that's like clicking in my brain now.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah. So this time my lens was more on the research side, where last year my lens was more on the advocacy side.
sure. Yeah. Yeah, I know it must make a big difference to travel with a community of people, even if you're just meeting them all for the first time, to just be like, we're together, we're staying in the same house. Like,
No, yeah, absolutely. No, it made a huge difference.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's good to know.
yeah.
I'll tell Susan.
Yes, yes, the process in which you send the group and we had to meet several times before we went, that made a difference too.
Yeah, I bet. I
Yeah.
can imagine. Such an overwhelming experience.
Yeah, it can be, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so
We're a
let's
minute
close
out.
the rooms.
Should I close them? Okay.
Yeah,
And they'll get 60 seconds.
exactly.
Perfect.
Welcome back, everyone. Could we have a share out in terms of maybe several of you can talk about what you talked about so that we can all learn from each other? Thank you for coming, Heather.
I'll jump in real quick.
Yeah,
Um, Myself and Laura, we actually discussed some of the assignments and the activities that we had planned. Laura has some really cool things that she's doing. She's in the nonprofit world. So she mentioned her civic engagement pieces, and they have a young leaders council. And they like to get the students out in the environment. And they take them, she's in Florida, so they take them out to the Everglades to kind of look at, the different organisms that are affected in the ecosystems, um, things like that, or even meet with the representatives, which I think is really a big part of our students learning and trying to educate folks on how to, policy changes and things like that. So those are some big takeaways that I got from Laura. She was awesome.
wonderful. Thank you. I know there's a lot of educators in here, and I know you have lessons that you can share.
I can share a little bit about what we talked about in our breakout room. A few of us, we chatted about the different spaces that we work in and what roles we currently have. And then we talked about how there's room for more implementation of like climate action, um, education, and how they're in our programming. Um, there we have like a little bit of the way there, but there's definitely still room to grow and a lot of value in adding in more tangible action steps on how we can talk about it and share more resources and knowledge about everything. Yeah.
Okay. You're inspiring me. I'm like, I want to create a database now, like so that you can all put your lessons in and we can just all share with each other. That was one of the one of the biggest comments at COP 30 as well, is that we have so much good work, but we're so siloed. And if we could just share what we've been doing, and then yeah. Any others?
I'll hop on and share for a moment because Cook, you and I weren't in an official breakout room, but our conversation was striking to me while folks are off in their rooms, just about what you noticed at COP, and that education was like really forefront there, and that like as a climate solution, education is more of a proactive solution rather than constantly reacting to all the bad and all the impacts. And I find that frame really empowering for thinking about education as a proactive way to work with a changing climate.
Thanks, Danielle. Others? Thank you, Lauren. Lauren chatted, I'm so excited that education was a significant topic. I picked up on that theme over the past few days myself in following the activity. Absolutely. Yeah. Yep, I completely agree. Brazil just has a beautiful way of framing things. Any others?
Cook, maybe I'll just speak up in what you said earlier about sharing lessons and resources. A lot of the data that I've been looking at lately is how educators at any level, K to 12, I work in post-secondary, so in post-secondary as well, but like educators just don't necessarily have access to the professional development and the skills and the tools and resources. So when there's toolkits and there's ways to go about and there's frameworks and there's ideas and there's pedagogy, that's what to me inclusive communication involves, is especially for educators, so that they can kind of pick up ideas quickly and put it into practice in their classrooms. So that's, I think that's part of it seems, is resources and translation of, like you said, of science, of ideas into practice.
That's perfect. And there should also be talk about how it should be incentivized as well, because educators have so much on their plate right now already. So there has to be space. You know, we have to value this work enough that we will incentivize and give back, you know, educators, faculty space to do this work so that they can then pass it down to their students. Thank you, Laura. Laura chatted. It was great to hear from, I may be saying this wrong, but Carice, about some projects to help students dream, visualize, and think of implementation. Excellent. Any others? Maybe one last one? Okay. Well, I've been told to leave some room for Q&A. So any questions?
I'll just bring this back from earlier. Cook, there was some wondering about access to any of the student materials that were created. I don't know if you're able to do that, but a couple folks wanted to look at those projects a little closer if they could.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm more than willing to share it, and I have several others as well, so I can definitely share them. Because I work with teacher education, so I actually develop materials for K through 12, in addition to the college course that I teach in environmental science. So yeah, absolutely.
That's great. And yeah, if they're linked in your slideshow, I'll share out any materials and the recording to those who were registered for the workshop too after probably tomorrow.
Yeah, I love hearing that. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
of
you for
course.
all of your interest. Any other questions or comments? We'll just have an open discussion.
Can I say something real quick?
Of course.
It was great to see the Climate Gen folks and the University of Washington folks at the NSTA this last week when I was out there. But things like that are becoming rarer and harder for educators to go to. And I appreciated you saying something about incentivizing it for teachers because cost is a barrier for those things always. Because I mean, coming to a conference, coming to a national thing, can be great and inspiring. I happen to be able to go because I was presenting, but so many teachers that wanted to go couldn't because of cost and other factors.
That's so true. I would not have been able to go to COP without the University of Minnesota Institute of Environment supporting us as grad students. So I hear you. Especially in this environment where a lot of important educational resources have been cut. Yeah. Yes, Lauren.
I'm hearing a central theme, like in what you discussed of your assignment, where you were encouraged students to pick a topic and then, you know, make that decision of what they're going to focus on. And in some of the comments there from Laura and Danielle about encouraging students to dream. And then Kaya, you were sharing about similar to Laura's comments, how when students are then encouraged to take up the issues that are important to them. And so like thinking of inclusive communication and what you shared with us, how like it's great to see students like at COP, like what you showed of them, they have a lot of the answers or dreams themselves, but how do you encourage students who might need that nudge um, to take that step forward? Like, what do you do in your teaching that enables them or encourages them to have that autonomy in decision making in their learning?
Yeah, part of the class that I was talking about is the first half we spent a lot of time going to the parks and learning about them and learning the not only learning about the science side of the biodiversity, the non-invasive plants and so on, but we also learn about kind of the problems, the issues that they've been facing. For example, erosion, pollution, and it's their backyard. We connect it to their, and then we predict, where do you think if this continues, will you have this park in the future? So we could, one of the, I think one of the main things is just to connect it to on a personal level. And then I also do a lot of story sharing as well. So I play videos of let's say indigenous communities and what they're facing, not just indigenous in terms of America, but indigenous other places. How even though we live in Minnesota, we may not feel the impact of floods and so on, but maybe they know someone in Florida or in other parts of the United States or in the Philippines, or, you know, so I mix local with global impacts of climate change. And I think that on a personal level forms connection that then drives them on the science side of like, what can we do, you know? And the class that I teach is actually mostly non-majors. So they're not science majors. It fulfills their science course requirement for whatever major they're in. And let's say I had a really, you know, really sweet student in architecture, and they're like, oh yeah, we're actually working on that, you know, connecting how architecture, cement space, you know, impacts the global, you know, the global warming, climate, and so on. So they're starting to see their field, how that connects to the global, you know, the climate change and what they can do about it within their field. So I'm not, you know, forcing the lens to just be through science, but they can actually apply any lens and it's going to touch them. So you cannot avoid it. You know? Yeah. And it also empowers them when part of the lesson is, what can you do about it then? So the following the COP is one part of the assignment, but their capstone is actually to use culturally sensitive or appropriate strategies in terms of what would they do against it. So some of them write letters to their congressmen. Some of them go to the park and actually pick up the trash. Some of them decide they do it as a group. Some of them, you know, one of their actions is to create informational sheets that they're going to hand out. So they actually, part of the class ends in a capstone where they are actually doing some action. Yeah. Hopefully that answered your question.
Very much, yes, thank you.
I have a question as well, and this can be for anyone that has insight. I work with a lot of primarily middle school students that come from all over the Midwest, like different regions, different schools, different backgrounds. And we're only teaching them for 3 days at a time on the trip that they come to my environmental center. And so I'm wondering if anyone has any ideas for how some kind of climate action could be implemented into curriculum that can have some kind of effect, or I guess that's not quite the word I'm looking for, some kind of impact on them if they're not without knowing directly what issues are going on around them in their like region or what things they're super invested in, kind of how to generalize it so that it could be applied to students of different backgrounds and that have different abilities and resources and needs, if that kind of makes sense.
I'll share a little. Chloe, I used to work at Wolfridge Environmental Learning Center, so a very similar place to where I think you work, from what I saw in registration. And I always found that to be a big struggle when students are only coming for like 3 to 5 days and you're not there. But with some space from that now, I think of it as like, what are the beauties of like learning in a place that's not your home and how that could help you reflect on your home? And so I wonder if there's examples or things at your center, or really focus it around like, how do you feel when you're here? How do you feel when you're home? Like, and like relating that to like a changing climate, and yeah, maybe some just like reflection base of like, what do you love about your home? What do you want to see change about your home to like make it healthy for everybody? Those could be some interesting things. Maybe But yeah, I know I hear the struggle you're talking to. A lot of our resources, Climate Gens, really focuses on like tapping into values around climate change too, just as a way to access like and acknowledge that like individual actions are a really great way to connect with our own values and feel like we are like members of society with integrity, but at the same time we know collective action in our homes and communities is really how we like move the needle. So a values activity is a really nice way to kind of honor both of those, individual action, collective action, and those can be implemented anywhere. Yeah, I see some other ideas coming in too, one from Andy in the chat. And I'm just gonna acknowledge, I think we're at about time here, coming up on the 5 o'clock hour. Cook, I'll pass it to you just if you have any last words to say. And again, I, from the Climate Generation end, will send everybody follow-up materials in the recording for things as well. So thank you all, and I'll pass it to Cook.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and I love hearing your questions and your ideas. I will probably steal some of your ideas, some of the stuff that you're doing as well, or sharing. Well, I think that that's a better word of sharing. But just kind of second what Andy said, food. That was a huge conversation at COP30. It's not just, you know, we sometimes narrowed our view in terms of climate crisis, but its impact on food, on living situations, on health. There's so many different focus areas that you can approach it to. So it's not just, you know, the environmental science side of it that's impacted by climate crisis. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Keep up the good work, the great work. And perhaps we could create a community of practice and share our lesson plans and create that database. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.